Hello all, and welcome back to Homestuck for Dummies, my hit series that everyone's raving about these days. Today we'll be moving on to Act 3. Oh boy. To sum up last act, John was not dead, but instead teleported to another place that we still don't know the name of. He fucked around in his house some more. There was a voice in his head who we found out was some dude in the future named Wayward Vagabond. We met Dave, and a whole lot of nothing happened. Anyway, moving on. Before we jump into Act 3, we get a look at a page in the worn-out Colonel Sassacre's daunting text of magical frivolity and practical japery that was inside of John's dad's safe. And we get a long message to John, sort of talking about his journey, and it drops a few important keywords, which I want to list off for you. Warring royalty in a timeless expanse. Agents, exiles, consorts, colonel sprites, underlings, denizens, and then 4 titles: the heir of breath, seer of light, knight of time, and witch of space. And then the word ascend is also important. Hoo. And it's signed with Love Nana, P.S. Hoo. Alright, so we jump into Act 3, where we see a young girl, taking a nap beside some flowers, and then there's a pumpkin, a familiar looking pumpkin, and a flute, probably all totally unnecessary. And we don't know her name because she's asleep. So the reader input box names her Farm Stink Butt Lass. The reader input box then sort of demands that the narrator drop something on Farm Stink to wake her up. And as the narrator picks up the nearby pumpkin and attempts to drop it, it is disappearified. Interesting. There's also a note under her, and it reads, "Farm Stink, that is incredibly silly and a little bit rude. My name is..." Flip to the other side. Jade Harley. So that's this little girl's name. And then she wakes up. Neato. So now we get to be introduced to Jade. Woohoo. Alright. But not really. Not yet. We won't get fully introduced to her for a minute. But a few things we do get to learn about her is that she keeps little bands on her fingers to help her keep track of things. And she likes to spend time in her garden atrium. And she has a deep passion for horticulture. She also plays her flute, which of course is a running thing with the kids, is that they all play an instrument, except unlike the other 3 kids who are quite good with their instrument, Jade is not good at the flute. Oh well. Can't be She goes to capture lug the flute, but before she can do that, she has to choose her fetch modus. So all the other kids had one fetch modus, except for John. He got 2, but they were basically the same. Jade has like 10, 15, a bunch. I don't know. She selects her memory fetch modus, which requires her to play one of those memory games where you like pick the 2 cards that look the same. So she has to do that to pick out the card she wants, which is really stupid and annoying. But Jade is a quirky lass, as you will come to find. Water time. She then, after messing around for a sec, she looks at the colorful reminders on her fingers and is reminded that it is John's birthday, and his package will be arriving today. And some other reminders on her hands tell her that she has some stuff to go do. But the first thing on the list is to go see if John is online and wish him a happy birthday. So she capture logs a pumpkin and heads out of the room. No, wait, she doesn't. Instead, she decides to faff about and grabs some produce from the atrium before heading out, because she decides that her memory modus isn't very fun if it's not filled with a bunch of useless junk. Anyway, she uses her transportalizer to teleport her to a different part of the house, just below her room. And she climbs the stairs into her room, and we finally get to see all of her interests, or the rest of her interests, I suppose, which includes the fact that she's really into furries, fauna of an anthropomorphic... It's quote-unquote fauna of an anthropomorphological persuasion, but furries. She has an uncanny knack for nuclear physics, and she likes tinkering with gadgets. She is narcoleptic. She enjoys gardening, and she is, quote, prone to patterns of precognitive prognostication. Okay, more of her interests. So we see that she has some guns, actually, in the corner, and she is apparently quite skilled with them. Though she would never settle her crosshairs on an innocent creature, anthropomorphically persuaded or otherwise. We see more gadgets that she likes to tinker around with, some of which are apparently mysterious inventions made by her grandpa. And then we learn that her grandfather is a world-renowned explorer, naturalist, treasure hunter, archaeologist, scientist, adventurer, big game hunter, billionaire extraordinaire. So I guess he's pretty cool. And he supposedly spends most of his time in the grand foyer, stewing in his own intensity and charisma. Anyway, Jade starts digging around for her computer. But first, before she really gets down to that, she grabs her rifle and sets it to her strike specibus, because, can never be too careful, I suppose. She goes over to her wardrobifier, which causes the pattern on her shirt to change randomly, which, as you may have noticed, all of the kids have a pattern on their shirt, but Jade's sort of switches around from time to time. I wonder why. She's just so quirky. She sets a handful of designs for it to cycle between, and then starts messing around with some of her toys. like the squiddles, which are little squid octopus looking things that have like a magnet on the bottom, so they like attach to each other. I don't know. It's all right. She looks out of her window at the nearby volcano. She opens her little chest of stuff, because I guess everyone has like a chest or a closet or whatever. I don't know. She picks up her little 8-ball and sort of shakes it, but she doesn't believe in that stuff, so whatever. She then starts gathering up, or she then starts getting ready to go feed Beck, her dog. But you can't just feed this dog anything, apparently. She pulls some steak out of her fridge and lightly irradiates it, which is a thing to do. She also picks up her bass, woo, and plays a sick bass line. It's actually, it's okay. It's not actually like that sick, but you know, it's more of a chill groove type thingy. Anyway, she finally gets around to opening up her laptop so she can pester John and wish him a happy birthday. She notices that she has a bunch of messages from Dave, who was trying to talk to her, but she was apparently asleep. But because it's Dave, he doesn't just go, hey, and then that's it. When she doesn't respond, he sends a very long string of messages where he just sort of goes on and on about nothing. Then he drops his newest remix and then heads out. She then checks mspaintadventures.com, where she reads the current story, which is where blah 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 we get this lovely little picture of a shitty drawing of John sitting on his lawn with the Slimer Pogo, and the beautiful phrase, "It begins to dawn on you that everything you just did may have been a colossal waste of time." Funny stuff. She then decides, since John still isn't online, she's gonna pester Dave, and they have a little conversation that we've already seen from earlier, where she just asks if he's talked to John, and they just sort of have a nice little back and forth. Yeah. Oh shit. Guess what? It's time to cut back to Dave. He's having the fight with his bro. So Dave gets ready to fight, and his bro drops a little cow on the ground and starts fucking flash stepping all over the place. And instead of fighting Dave head on, he just sort of uses his insane speed to move Cal all over the place, and he just sort of like slaps Dave in the face with Locale and knocks him around that way, which seems like a very humiliating way to get beaten up. But it's pretty funny, I cannot lie. And yeah, Dave just gets his ass totally beat by his bro, who is just beating him with a puppet. Well, there we go. Alright, anyway. Jade then has a conversation with Rose, which we've also seen before, where Rose is like, hey, so you've been very cagey and insisting that today is going to be a very important day. Why? And Jade's like, yeah, ha ha ha. Don't worry about it. Just I'm cagey and quirky. Anyway, that'll get explained later, I'm sure. Anyway, so we go back to Rose, who is now in the mausoleum, and she captulogs her dead cat Jaspers for whatever reason, and descends the staircase below to escape the fire, which is almost upon her. She goes down into a tunnel where we see a green light, and we switch back to Jade. Jade grabs her stuff and descends further down into her house. And then we shoot way back into the future, but not with Wayward Vagabond. Instead, the Peregrine Mendicant, who is standing next to an apple-shaped pod with the familiar house symbol on the side, and a weird little metallic worm comes out of the side, and it starts eating her mailboxes that she had, and she reaches for a black sword, which she was carrying. We then go back to Rose's game facts thing, and then we see that we see that she has asked John to put some stuff in. It's mainly just a bunch of stuff about how to craft items, because it's a super overcomplicated thing. Come back to Rose. We see she's entered a strange room. On the wall is a sign that reads SN, and she is now inside of the laboratory. There's no one to be seen, however, but there are tons of little boxes on the ground, and there's a mixture of light green and dark green ones, and as it zooms out, we see that they're arranged in a chessboard, I guess checkerboard would be fair too, pattern, and it is referred to as the hub grid. We go back to Jade. I thought Act 2 jumped around a lot, but gosh dang, we cannot stay on one character. Get used to that. It's just going to be a thing from now on, so yeah. Jade appears further down in the house in a weird room with a bunch of animal heads on the wall, presumably where her grandpa puts his hunting trophies. She then goes down into the room below that, where there's tons of suits of armor. Below that is a bunch of weird mummified corpses and such. Below that is a room that has a bunch of paintings that have been bleached from sitting in the front windows of beauty parlors, and they all have like a blue tint to them. That's really weird. It will get explained later. It's not going to get any less weird when you get the explanation, but all we know for now is that her grandpa had a hobby of going to beauty parlors and taking the sun-bleached paintings, portraits, whatever you want to call them, that had turned blue, and taking them back to his house for whatever strange reason he might have. Anyway, on the ground level, we see a weird creature blocking the transportalizer. Seems kind of silly. And then, I forgot this happened in Act 3. This is a fun surprise for everybody. So, we get a Jade gets a message from someone whose username is carcinogeneticist, someone we don't know. A fifth person has entered here. This strange person types in all caps, presumably because they're very angry and yelling, and they declare that today is the day that Jade fucks everything up, and calls her really stupid. Jade gets angry and then blocks them. Well, that was something. Anyway, back to Rose. She checks the computer to see if any of the hubs are unlocked so she can plug her laptop into one and connect it to the internet. There is exactly one unlocked, and if I remember right, it is the 413th hub. If you start at the top left and go right, because 413 is a really important number. I'm not going to count it though, but I'm like 90% sure. Oh wait, no, because okay, yeah, but it is the 413th. If you follow this little thing here, you can pause to figure it out. I have it on screen here if you want to count it for whatever reason. Anyway, but it is the 413th grid, hub, whatever. Anyway, she drops all of her stuff in the middle of the room, and she accidentally drops Jasper's on what she does not realize to be a transportalizing pad, and Jasper's corpse is gone, transportalized away. She picks all her stuff back up, except for Jasper's, of course, because he's gone, and then she finds the unlocked hub and plugs her laptop in. And then we see a counter on the wall, it says Skynet Laboratory unestablished in, and there's a counter counting down from 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Whatever could that mean? Anyway, in the future, we see a house counter similar to the one we saw before with Wayward Vagabond. It's counting down from 8 seconds. So, and we see it 9 seconds. We see it count down all the way to 1. And then we see that it is actually a counter inside of Peregrine Mendicant's pod, which she has just entered, and as it reaches 0, the pod takes off and begins flying off somewhere. We cut back to Dave, who is still getting his ass beat. He attempts to run away, but his bro appears, this time fighting him himself instead of using Lil Cal. He gives him a thumbs down, and then Dave does the little like cutthroat thing, and they begin battling it out with their katanas, but Dave is no match for his bro, who is extremely speedy and starts knocking him all over the place. But hey, like, Dave's really giving it his all, and I'll give him that. Oh man, they are fast, but Dave's bro is so fast that it turns out Dave was actually battling his after image. What an anime motherfucker. Like, goddamn, he's in here with these fucking Kamina glasses. He's fucking flash stepping all over the place. He's got his fucking after image fighting for him. Like, fuck. Anyway, yeah, Dave gets his ass beat and gets tossed back down the stairs. And we go back to Rose, who heads over to a large monitor that is showing tons of red, yellow, and green dots, and we learned that and blue dots, and we learned that the dots each signify meteors that are falling. The blue dots are meteors that have a really long time before impact, while the red dots are meteors that have already landed. And of course, it's a slider from blue to red. You can figure that out on your own, I'm sure. And there's also other monitors. The only one that really gets noticed, though, is it seems that there's one that there's a blah, blah, blah. There's a monitor that shows like every location and its longitude and latitude, and it seems like there is an especially large meteor headed straight for the lab that Rose is inside of right now. And it is a greenish yellow, so it's still got some time, but we don't know what that means. And the largest meteor of all is which is about the size of Australia from the looks of it, is apparently headed to some place out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Wonder what's over there. Either way, Rose decides to reconnect with John, and she starts navigating around the house. And we get to actually do the navigating in a little flash game. And when we get back to John, he's bouncing around with his pogo hammer, battling the two ogres from before, and he's actually doing a decent job. He's doing a lot of somersaults and crazy tricks, and turns out Nana Sprite is actually giving him a hand as well, shooting some sort of eye laser beam that seems to be doing a lot of damage. Rose, jumping in to help, goes to drop a fridge on one of the ogres, but the ogre, being quite large, catches the fridge and hits John with it. John goes flying off into the distance, but Nana Sprite summons an ethereal oven, which catches John inside of it. John pops out and goes back to fighting as Nana Sprite drops a ton of ethereal kitchen appliances on top of one of the ogres. John does the final blow before dealing with the second ogre, which he lands a flurry of blows on as Nana Sprite shoots out another beam at it, and then Rose drops the alchemitor on top of it, dealing the final blow. Man, what a crazy fight. John did something competent. Can you believe it? My God. We're finally getting somewhere, guys. It's happening. We're doing it, man. We're making it happen. So yeah, this is the point in the story where we start really like getting in the nitty gritty. So fucking buckle up, fuckers. Anyway, Rose and John have a little conversation where Rose explains that while they previously believed that playing the game is what caused the meteors to fall, she is now not so sure. She believes the meteors were going to fall anyway, so it was in their best interest to play the game, and it seems like it's going to be the only way for them to escape the meteors, though we already kind of knew that. Let me get a little drinky drink. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. All right. John has a little conversation with Nana Sprite where he asks if she would be able to carry him up to his first gate since she can fly, to which she responds that she cannot because it would sort of defeat the whole purpose of him having to go through the trial of getting up there himself. He then asks if she could explain some things without being coy and using riddles, and of course she responds by being coy and using riddles, and tells him that when he passes through the first gate, everything will change. Elsewhere, in a purple place, we see John's dad making quick work of some imps. And we see somebody is watching John's dad as well as John on some fenestrated screens. He seems very angry about it. And then we switch over to Peregrine Mendicant, who is now flying westward in her apple-shaped pod. And she starts looking through some of the mailboxes that she had with her. And we learn that she is a very passionate male woman. She pulls a postal hat out of one of the mailboxes and puts it on and goes on a little mental tirade. Well, I guess the narrator does, but whatever, about how great the postal service is. Anyway, she goes over to a nearby monitor. It's exactly like the one that Wayward Vagabond had. She turns it on and we see Jade on the screen, and it's sort of staticky and green. And she types into it to talk to Jade, and she says, "Greetings." Jade looks a bit confused, and suddenly the screen explodes, creating a big hole in the side of the pod. We go back to Rose, who has 1 minute 43 seconds left, who goes over and notices an absurd tea set and a pink scarf on the ground. And there's also a cutesy bed and dresser and dolls and all types of stuff that you would find in a little girl's room. Quite odd. We then see out of the teapot comes a cute little mutant kitten. We go back to John, who jumps down into his dad's room through a hole in the ceiling. We then switch to Jade, who scampers into the foyer. She notices 4 house guests sitting on the 2 couches in the room. And she attempts to sneak by without alerting either the house guests or her grandpa. But she is quite sure that as soon as she tries to sneak by, the fireplace will light up, revealing her grandpa's silhouette. How predictable. And it happens. There he goes. The old man has the flame. So yeah, the fireplace suddenly begins raging, and we see the silhouette of her grandpa standing there. She goes to leap dramatically across to try and make a break for the front door, and as she does so, she falls asleep because, in case you forgot, she's narcoleptic. Jade jumps up from her little nap quickly, and we see the silhouette of her grandpa light up, and it turns out that he is, much like Rose's cat Jasper's, a taxidermied mannequin, and standing on a little pedestal with a plaque at the bottom that says Grandpa Hartley. She then has a little argument, quote unquote, with her grandpa about how her gun is big enough and she will be fine without going back and getting a bigger gun. And then she runs out the door and thinks about how he was much easier to deal with when he was alive. What a weird girl. I don't even know how to I don't know what to say about this one. A little narcoleptic scientist slash furry slash markswoman girl who is also cagey about maybe possibly being able to see the future. And she has a freaking taxidermied mannequin thingy of her dead grandpa, which she has fake arguments with. Typical teenage stuff, you know. All right, anyway, back to Peregrine Mendicant. We're going to call her PM from now on. She peeks out the hole that was caused by the computer exploding, and she sees another metal worm pop out of the side of the pod and grab one of the mailboxes that fell out with the explosion and bring it back to Rose. She is carrying the little kitten and wearing the pink scarf, and she goes over to what appears to be an arcade machine, but it turns out to actually be a purifier, and it's focused on her cat Jasper's back in the past when he was alive. Interesting. She hits the button, but it doesn't work. It actually paradoxifies a ghost imprint of Jasper's, which then turns sludge, of course. The machine next to it sucks up the sludge and then creates a little mutant kitten. Interesting. She then looks over at the screen, and Jasper's is disappearified, but not by Rose. Someone else did it. She then skips forward on Jasper's timeline to when he reappeared, and the next time he was seen was when his dead body washed up on the shore near Rose's house in a little tuxedo. She then fast forwards to the present on the purifier, where she sees Jasper's, the dead body of Jasper's, of course, you know, the taxidermied dead body in a cute little suit, and she purifies him to her current position, which works. But then she notices that the timer only has 14 seconds left. So she grabs Jasper's and the mutant kitten, and she scampers over to the transportalizer. We go back to Jade, who is walking around looking for her pet dog, Beck, and suddenly there's a flash of what appears to be green lightning, and we see in the background an ominous shape. But as she turns around to see what's there, it hides. We go back to John, who is now in his dad's room, and John starts snooping around. John becomes confused, as he had always seen his father as a prankster. I mean, he did enjoy harlequins and such, but turns out his dad's room is really boring, and his dad may have just been a totally normal, boring businessman all along, which conflicts with everything John knows about his dad, apparently. John starts sort of having a mental breakdown about all of this and curls up into the fetal position on his dad's bed. We then cut to John's dad, who is lifting a large safe, which he throws at an imp, We then go back to the strange figure who is watching all of this on his screens, who is still very angry, and we get to meet this guy. We see a set of hands typing into a keyboard, and they type the name Spade Slick, but that doesn't appear to be quite right. So we get introduced to this strange dark figure. Turns out he is the Arc Agent Jack Noir. He oversees various affairs in his quote-unquote dark kingdom. He's currently trying to figure out what to do with this prisoner, aka John's dad, and he's watching multiple affairs going on at the moment through his fenestrated walls. He has 3 walls set up. He originally had 4, but it was stolen some time ago. He is dressed up in sort of harlequin-y attire, but he seems to hate it. But he wears it because his quote-unquote exalted ruler forces him to. But he refuses to wear the hat. That's where he draws the line. He then sets his fenestrated wall to view one of his minions, a large brute carrying the door to what appears to be have been like a bank vault or something. But then the fenestrated wall switches on its own. We see a pair of glaring eyes, one of which has a scar through it. And then a finger appears pointing at the hat, demanding that Jack put on the hat. And he does so with disgust. Then we see John's dad is making quick work of the large brute. We go back to John, who sees some unopened birthday presents, which his dad had not gotten around to giving him yet. One of which is a shit ton of blank capture log cards, which makes his inventory super large now. So that's cool. And the thing that allows him to use both the stack and queue moduses at the same time. But that's not really that important, because at this point the inventory stuff is basically useless, aside from a few times where we'll see Jade faff around with it. He also has a box of fruit gushers and a nice suit that he got from his dad, which he puts on. He then goes to eat some gushers, but then he realizes, no, it can't be. The heinous batter witch Betty Crocker makes fruit gushers, and John hates Betty Crocker, which means gushers are now ruined for him forever. Poor John. Everything he loves is slowly being taken from him. I cry. Anyway, back to Jade. She goes over to retrieve a package, which is laying out on the lawn. Well, lawn, quote unquote, somewhere on her island that she lives on. And then suddenly, in a flash of green light, her dog appears. She aims her bullet at her dog, and as she does so, when it gets near the dog, who is glowing with strange green irradiated energy, the bullet just melts before it can reach him. She then fires off a second bullet, and as she does so, the dog starts glowing green, and Jade and the dog are teleported to a different part of the island. She fires a third shot, and we get a really trippy clip thingy of like a far out zoom in the deepest recesses of space, and it zooms in to the Milky Way galaxy before getting back to the island, and Jade and the dog again teleport to a different place on the island. Another bullet another teleport, though this time she teleports to a bunch of different places, all that we've seen before, including Dave's house, the laboratory, John's house. She then fires off the last bullet in a different direction. The dog teleports in front of the bullet at insane speeds and actually catches the bullet in its mouth and spits it out. And as it's distracted doing so, Jade grabs the package, and when the dog teleports back next to Jade, she throws it the irradiated steak. And then, then she passes out. The dog grabs Jade and takes her back to her bed before teleporting away. What a thing that happened. So I just like to sum up Jade. So she's a scientist furry, markswoman, who gets into arguments with a taxidermied version of her grandpa, and she has a irradiated teleporting dog who is fast enough to catch bullets. So yeah, that's stuff that's happening. Back to Rose. She is in a new place wherever the transportalizer is taking her. And it turns out she's back in her house in her mother's room. And is there a lot of alcohol in here. Like, goddamn. And we see the fire raging outside when suddenly a giant meteor lands on top of the laboratory, just obliterating it. And it sends debris and such all the way over to Rose's house. We go back to John, who's just sort of chilling, crafting, and then Jade is dreaming, and suddenly we see a strange robot version of Jade, which is her dream bot, apparently. And we also see another Jade who's in golden pajamas in a different version of her room. The golden pajama Jade begins to fly, and we see the robot also begins to fly as the two mirror each other's movements. She picks up a blue package, and then we go back into the past where John and Jade have a little conversation about John sending off Jade, Dave, and Rose's presents because apparently their birthdays are all right next to each other. And then she mentions that she had to block someone that that John refers to as the troll. And it turns out there's apparently a bunch of these trolls that keep bothering them. They don't really know why the trolls keep bothering John and Jade, but I guess that's just what internet trolls do. I don't know. But it turns out that even when they block them, they seem to be able to get around it. And John even decides to change his Pesterchum handle to try to throw them off. Anyway, back to John in the present. He walks into his room and sees that all of his movie posters are defaced with a bunch of Harlequin and clown crude drawings. I don't know. I'm not a wordsmith. Anyway, back to Rose. she runs back into her room and begins talking to John. They have a little conversation about how the fire has finally reached Rose's house, and then John complains about his posters being defaced. But Rose gets confused because she claims that the posters were always like that from the very first time that she saw his room. John thinks she's pulling a prank, but she is being quite serious. John starts kind of freaking out again. We go back to WV, Wayward Vagabond, who's standing atop his pod. And he's trying to figure out a way to get down currently, when he notices a long rope atop one of the pieces of the nearby frog ruins. So he goes back inside and goes to purify it. But then a blue package appears. He opens it up, and there's a letter and another envelope. And he decides to keep these with him for now. He then goes to the purifier again, this time purifying the jumble of cable that he saw. And he uses it to climb down the side with his pumpkin bindle in tow. We then see Wayward Vagabond climbing down through a gun's crosshair. And we see inside of the frog ruins is a strange carapist's person who, holding an AR covered in caution tape, who is referred to as Aimless Renegade. We go back to Rose, who is insistent that John's posters have always been defaced with weird clown imagery. And she sends screenshots of John's room that she took very early on. And they prove that John's posters were always like that, when John tries to say that Rose is just editing the pictures or something because just to mess with him. She says she doesn't have any sort of programs on her computer that she could even do that with. John's really confused as to why he never noticed this stuff before. Rose starts dabbling in her psychoanalysis and suggests that perhaps John was the one who defaced the posters, but he was unaware of this on a conscious level. And he always saw the posters as being undefaced. And now that he's entered his dad's room and realized that his father is not a Harlequin loving prankster, but a totally normal businessman, it has caused a shift in his brain, which now allows him to see the totally clown defaced posters for what they really are. But anyway, they kind of drop that, and Rose just kind of explains what she's doing, building all this stuff above John's house to, go up to the gate. And we see that there's like 5 or 6 ogres and a crap ton of imps climbing John's house to get to him. And then Rose says that she's starting to run low on time, and Dave still has yet to start playing the game to help get her out. We go back to Jade, the golden pajama Jade, who flies out of her room, which we see was inside of some weird golden tower. and she flies over a large golden city of sorts. Then we go back to the Dreambot, which we see is flying around Jade's island toward the volcano. And all over the island, as Jade flies around on this golden planet, she then flies in the direction of one of its moons, where she sees a familiar looking figure who she doesn't recognize, but we recognize to be the Peregrine Mendicant, though in much better shape. We then see from the Dreambot's perspective that Beck has arrived. We then go to PM in the future, who has landed at the Frog Ruins next to WV. They then notice each other, and WV sees that one of the instructions on the thing he got is to give the blue box to PM. So he starts wandering over. PM, wary, reaches for her sword, and we see Aimless Renegade, who we will now refer to as AR, up in the Frog Ruins, looking through the scope on his AR, which AR rifles I don't think actually are supposed to have scopes because they're automatic weapons, but I don't know shit about guns. But yeah, I don't know. Anyway, he starts firing off at WV, who starts dancing around and runs for cover to dodge the bullets. He then starts firing off at PM, who does the same. They both end up taking cover behind the same rock, and WV hands over the present. She takes it, and then we go back to Golden Pajama Jade, who flies into a neighboring tower, not unlike her own, and she peeks inside, and we see it sleeping inside this tower is a Golden Pajama John, who looks to be having a nightmare. There's also a bunch of Harlequin scribbles on the walls, and a creepy Harlequin doll laying next to him. She laments how she's waiting for John to wake up, but she can't really do much, and he will wake up when he's ready. She then flies back out and looks up at a large blue orb in the sky, which she refers to as Skya, which we know is the planet in the center of the Inciposphere. And apparently it's about to eclipse the planet she's on, and she heads back inside her tower. We go to John, and present John, who is messing around with his alchemitor, makes a bunch of new weapons and whatnot, like a giant hammer, which he can't wield on his own, so he creates some autonomous gloves that can wield it for him. He makes a hammer out of his pogo hammer and a iron, which is called the Wrinkle Fucker, which is just a beautiful name for a weapon. Back to Dave, as a shit ton of crows fly about overhead. And meteorites fall all over the city. Dave runs back up the stairs to have the final round with his bro. Dave runs for his bro at top speed, and his bro charges in return. Lil Cow is just sort of, there, being puppeteered by his bro. Dave's bro with one quick series of slashes, breaks Dave's sword as well as chopping Lil Cow to pieces, and sends Dave flying across the rooftop, where his bro's copy of the game lands next to him, and his bro flies off on some sort of flying skateboard. Dave, totally and utterly defeated, messages John and just says, "Bro just kicked my ass." It's really all there is to say on the matter. Hey guys, this is a future I2. I forgot to record over this part, so I'm doing it in post anyway. So, yeah, Jade stuff is happening. The Skya, is eclipsing the golden planet that Jade's dream self is on. And she's pestering John as it does so. Very slowly. Any day now. It'll happen. There it goes. Alright, so a bunch of clouds start passing by. And we see in these clouds space, John's house, a squiddle. We see, Jade pestering John, them having that conversation. Which was shown through a cloud. We get another cloud showing John's house over the abyss. Another cloud showing Rose's house. Another one showing tree, Dave's house, Beck, the volcano, John's face. And now we get to see a meteor comes out of a portal in the sky, lands next to a volcano, creating a crater, which turns out to be the explosion that Jade heard in that one conversation. We see that Beck was apparently born from this crater. Dream Jade goes to inspect. But Beck blocks her way, as it does in the real world, where Beck blocks Dreambot Jade. You see that John is no longer in his bed, or Dream John is no longer in his bed. He's now floating outside. He doesn't appear to be awake yet, though. He's almost there, so close. And we see him open his eyes, and it turns out to actually be the thing he saw when he slept back in Act 2. Bam. And they both wake up. Woohoo. Pizza. Back to past me. Jade then wakes up and begins messaging John again. And she asks how John's doing. And then we see another conversation from Jade's perspective that we'd already seen from John's, where she was just basically like encouraging him and telling him that he should keep going and yada yada. Anyway, she decides to update her colorful reminders because she's completed some of her tasks. She then goes over and grabs her harpoon gun and shoots it at the nearby frog ruins. And she uses it to zip line over to them. We go back to John, who his house has now been built all the way up to the first gate, though he's standing at the altimeter, which is near the bottom. And it's covered in ogres and imps. We go to Dave, who's standing there, mourning the loss of his blade and the destruction of Locale. He picks up his broken sword and the game for the beta, or the beta for the game. Oops, his bro's copy of the game. And then he messages Rose to let her know that he has the game and he's going to go install it. We go back months in the past. I can't talk tonight, apparently. Where Rose has received a letter from John wishing her a happy birthday, as well as a present, which is the present was the knitting needles and stuff that we've seen her use a bunch. So apparently it was a good present. She also goes over to her computer and answers a message from one of the trolls whose username is Grim Auxiliatrix, who then starts berating Rose for her stupidity. Rose is confused and asks if they've spoken before, to which the troll replies, they have spoken, but in the future. The troll seems to be very annoyed with Rose. Rose tries to figure out exactly what's going on. The troll drops some sort of cagey thing where it spoiler, but not really. We're getting into we're getting into the temporal shenanigans, fuckers. So apparently the troll has spoken to Rose in Rose's future, but it was actually a few minutes ago from the troll's perspective. So yeah. Then the troll tells Rose that they've sort of been told to fuck with the 4 kids, but it doesn't really seem to make any sense. So Rose and the troll sort of agree to be pals, at least for the time being. We then switch over to Dave, at the same time in the past, who has just received his gift from John, which is the set of shades that we always see him wear. In the past, he had Kamina type glasses similar to his bro. And we see Dave getting messaged by a troll by the username of Adios Toreador. Oh, also, the troll that was talking to Rose has a weird typing quirk where she capitalizes the first letter of every single word, and doesn't use punctuation. This troll has a typing quirk where the capitalization is switched, so the first letter of a sentence or phrase is uncapitalized, and then all the rest of the letters are capitalized. And he also, the only punctuation he uses is commas. Anyway, the troll shows up and starts trying to shit on Dave, and Dave's basically not having it because it's weak sauce. Like, this dude's trolling is absolute shit. Dave starts insinuating that this troll is only bothering him because he wants a piece of Dave, romantically and or sexually. Saying that he's a busy man and he would like to know exactly when and where it's going to happen so he can clear his schedule. Which, of course, now that Dave's firing back, it throws the troll off because this troll is really shitty at trolling. And then Dave just keeps firing back. The troll starts backing down and decides that he's going to leave, but Dave ain't having none of that. As Dave says, quote, "Oh no, dude, you sassed me up. We are in the shit now together for the long haul. We're mother fucking entrenched in this bitch, you and me. Welcome to Nam. Now grab my hand and shimmy your soggy ass off that muddy bank before Charlie gets the fucking drop." End quote. And he just starts going off on this dude, and then the troll blocks Dave because Dave just fucking decimated him, I guess. Anyway, we go to the aimless renegade AR up in the frog ruins in the future. His weapon is empty, so he drops it on the ground and goes searching for more ammo. He picks up his 2 pistols and starts looking around for a rocket launcher. He picks it up and goes back over to the opening in the ruins. And looks out, but he can't see them, so he decides to wait a minute before firing off. We then see in the center of the frog ruins, there's a weird platform that's attempting to go down or up. It's hard to tell. But it's stuck because there's a really old base stuck in it, like stuck in the groove between the platform and the wall. We go back to Jade in the present, which is a relative term that doesn't actually mean anything at this point. Who is standing at the frog ruins, and she drops off the blue package, which is then disappearified, which then it is revealed that this is the blue package that WV just appearified and then gave to PM. And the cord she used to zipline over here is the cord that he grabbed in the future as well. So, which means that Jade totally knew that all of that stuff was going to happen and that she knew to do these exact things. Very interesting. AR starts firing off his rocket launcher, blowing up some of the surrounding area. And PM comes out from behind the rock, package in one hand, sword in the other. AR aims at her and is a bit distracted by because he seems to have taken a liking to her, but he decides that he can't allow himself to be distracted. He has to uphold the law, and he shoots his rocket launcher, but as he does, he sort of stumbles back and accidentally hits PM's pod instead of, her like he was planning. The two, WV and PM, quickly scamper into PM's pod, but before WV can make it in, AR fires off another rocket, which explodes and sends WV flying. PM goes inside of her pod, following the notes that were left by Jade, and puts the package on the transportalizer inside and hits the syndificate button, which sends it way back into the past. We then see Jade's grandpa when he was alive, out hunting, and we see a young Jade riding on Beck. And it's her birthday, and suddenly the blue package appears next to Jade. She opens it up, and it turns out to actually be the present from John that was sent to her on her 13th birthday. And apparently this really convoluted set of events needed to happen to send this present back into the past so that Jade would meet John in the first place, which then in turn leads to the group of 4 kids getting together so that they can play the game. Doobity-doo-ba-doo. Back to John's dad and Jack Noir. Jack Noir goes to deal with John's dad, but John's dad punches Jack in the face. Jack pulls out his switchblade, but then John's dad sets Jack's hat on fire, completely ruining it. Jack, who absolutely hated that hat, decides that he now owes John's dad a favor and lets him go free of charge. Back to Jade in the present. She hops over into the frog ruins, where she looks at a strange wall that seems to be covered in weird hieroglyphs. And Dave begins installing the game. We cut back to Jade, who's running around in the frog ruins to pass time while the game loads. Dave starts working on his webcomic. Jade stumbles upon a strange device shaped like a large lotus leaf. We then see a shit ton of meteors, which are headed for Rose's house, falling from the sky. Dave quickly gets to work setting up all the necessary equipment, but he does it in a really nonsensical manner. We cut back to Jade, who's just staring at the strange lotus-shaped device, which has a countdown timer on it with about 4.5 minutes left. Then there appears outside of Rose's house a tornado of fire, actually. So that's cool, I guess. We then get a side-by-side of the Lotus machine and Rose's Corkscruder, which both have countdowns on them, and the countdowns are actually in tandem with each other. Back at Dave's room, there's a shit ton of crows flying in his window, and he's trying to stay concentrated while they fly around his room. John's Nana grabs his Colonel Sasker's book and tosses it off into the abyss. Rose having done all the necessary stuff in a much faster, more forthwith manner than John, gets her entry item, which is a bottle. And with 4 seconds left, well, 3 seconds left actually, she smashes the bottle, which causes her home to be sent into the medium just as the meteor crashes at her house. Over back to Jade. The Lotus device opens up, revealing Dave's copy of Spurb, which was inside for some odd reason. We go back to John, who's dueling it out with tons of imps and ogres. He then climbs to the top of his house, where he uses the wrinkle fucker to bounce himself off and into the first gate. We pan out from John's house and we see that the structure that John's house is built on is actually part of a strange blue and black planet covered in dark gray clouds. And that is where the curtains close on Act 3. So yeah, crazy stuff, I suppose. So yeah, this is the part where Homestuck starts getting really complicated and convoluted. So hopefully you're able to keep up, but I mean, I'll summarize. So what happened this act? We met Jade, and we sort of saw everything she's been up to the present, just to sort of catch her up with what's going on, so we know what she's been up to this whole time. We met her dog Beck, who is a strange irradiated dog capable of teleporting around at insane speeds, and we got to get to know PM, the Peregrine Mendicant, better. We met AR, the Aimless Renegade. Dave had his fight with his bro. After getting his ass kicked, he got a hold of his copy of the game and managed to get Rose into the medium just in time to save her from getting killed by the meteor headed for her house. Jade found a strange lotus-shaped device in the frog ruins near her house, which, for some reason, when it opened up, had Dave's copy of Spurb in it. But this is good because Jade didn't have a copy of Spurb, so now she can play the game. And John, after having an existential crisis, managed to enter the first gate over his house. So yeah, that's cool. All fun stuff, you know. Good times. So yeah, I guess we will pick up from there next time. So I hope you have a good day or a good night or whatever it is for you. And I will see you in the next video. Mwah.